All right, I'm going to do the brachas now.
Yeah.
Just have this in mind. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asuk b'divrei Torah. Barev na Adonai Eloheinu, et divrei Toracha b'finu b'fi b'cha beit Yisrael, v'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzeinu v'tzeitzeim b'cha beit Yisrael. Kulanu yodea shemecha v'lomdei Toratecha lishma, Baruch atah Adonai ha'melamed Torah le'emu Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'cha banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, we remember we were davening for Eliyahu ben Avraham, who is now Eliyahu ben Avraham Yitzchak. He passed away. Remember, we were davening for him about a week ago. And he had severe liver failure and was going to go for an organ transplant. And unfortunately, he wasn't well enough to do the operation. So he was young. He was in his early 50s, which is young.
Sure. Yeah, so, that's where I'm at. Shem.
Yeah. So we're just doing the shir in his merit. We're just going to do one Mishnah, and then we're going to do Pikavot, and a Mishnah and Pikavot, and we're going to go immediately in the Mishnah Berurah, and we're going to cover some ground in the Gemara. Okay, just give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Okay, just going to finish in progress. All right. Pikavot, chapter 1, paragraph 17. Shimon, his son, says, all my days I've been raised among the sages, and I've found nothing better for oneself than silence. Not study, but practice is the main thing, and one who talks excessively brings on sin.
Brings on?
Sin.
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 Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something worth contemplating. I think it's a very good one. So Rabbi Daniel Brody gave the Mishnah Berurah. We're on section 183 and paragraph 25. And Shir Hatzion, we're in 183, paragraph 24. Now, what we're learning is we're learning the halachas of benching. Speaking in the benching, one must be very careful not to speak during benching, neither in the middle of a bracha, nor between them. Although some poskim rule that doing so knowingly renders the benching invalid, the Mishnah Berurah concludes that b'di'evet, meaning after the fact, one has still fulfilled the mitzvah and one does not have to repeat the benching. So I think what it's implying there is if you're doing it before and you know that you're interrupting it and you're conscious of it, that would be invalid. But if something came up, like somebody was ringing your doorbell and you said, just call Sophie to answer the doorbell or whatever, but even after the fact, it's not like it was premeditated with ill intent. When we refer to a bracha, we mean from the beginning of it all the way to the end. In other words, from Nodelecha, when you all until the end, where you say basically the end of Birkat Hamazon. So, for example, if a child started up, you can't say anything if one is benching. If one did, the benching is still valid. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means that you can't attend to a child or what. I'm sure you can, but I think it means that you have to give your attention without diversion. If you have to pick up the child, you've got to still carry on benching. I'm assuming that. I need to speak to Rabbi Daniel Brody for clarity. A silent delay in the benching. A silent delay is more serious, but only if the delay is as long as the time it takes to say 3 Torah brachas of benching, and only within a bracha. So if it takes a person 4 minutes to say the first 3 brachas of benching, then a 4-minute period of silence in the middle of a bracha renders the bracha invalid from the start, and one must restart the bracha from the beginning. If one had the same delay between brachas, one may just continue from where one stopped. Of course, one should avoid any major delays while benching. So, for example, if a child had a dirty diaper and one waited silently in the middle of the bracha until he left, and it took time, it would take for it to do the first three brachas, one must restart the bracha. So skip parts of benching, one should say the whole benching, the full paragraphs in the brachas. And if for some reason one skipped parts of the paragraph, it depends. If any main principles were left out, it's invalid. So this is what it includes that you have to say. You have to say breath, Torah, the land, etc., kingship of King David, Jerusalem. But one left out. Sorry, Michael.
No, sorry. I'm just switching it off the phone. Okay, sorry. Carry on. Sorry.
Okay, but one left out any non-core things. It's valid, and you need not repeat it. Okay. So at least you never got a call while we were doing a bracha. I guess that's the bottom line. All right. Yeah. So we're going to get started, guys. We've got a lot to cover in the Mishnah Brura. I think yesterday we had a lot of technical delays, etc. All right. So we dealt with the Kamanians. We're on 21a2, and the Gemara is going to discuss the difference between Shmuel and Rav's opinion here. So it just sets up the case. The Gemara elaborates on the next section of the Mishnah, which states, what is the case in which she pays what she has benefited? If she ate food from the middle of the street, she pays what she has benefited, meaning that there's no shame payment in the pays the animal's equivalent of the next meal, which was a discussion between Rabbah, which says the equivalent of straw, and Rava, his student, who said it's barley at 2/3 its value. But you don't have to pay what she consumed because you're exempt for shame in the public domain. But if it ate from the side of the street, she pays what she has damaged, meaning that that is unusual, and therefore it's keren tam, and you pay half payment damages. So the Gemara basically wants to know what this case of inverted commas, the side of the street is. What is it? What is the definition? So there's a definition difference between Rav and Shmuel. We're going to go through a little bit of detail quickly, and then we're going to break it up. So Rav said, and it refers to where she turns her head to get at the food that is on the side of the street. But Shmuel says, even if she turns her head to get at the food, the owner is also exempt from paying damages. Okay. So just bottom line quickly, there's a case difference between Rav and Shmuel. This is the case. You pay what the animal has benefited, etc. So if the animal ate food from the middle of the street, you pay what the animal has benefited, meaning you do not pay for shame payments in the public domain. All you pay for is the equivalent of the animal's next meal because it's satiated. Rubber basically says you pay the equivalent of straw if the animal ate straw, because that would be the default cheap meal according to the right quantity. And Rava saying no, we would pay barley 2/3 of its value because everybody would pay for barley and give their horse a nutritious meal, providing that barley was 1/3 off. So that's the argument. But the bottom line is you don't pay the 2,000 rands worth of salmon the animal consumed. But if the animal ate from the side of the street, you pay what she has damaged. Meaning, I'm going to just share a screen here a second. Okay. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
All right, so there are two different cases. We're not going to deal with the case where the store is on the narrow street at this point. We're just dealing with the normal street. So what would happen normally is your store would be here. Okay, your store would be up here. And your entrance where some of the food would be displayed would be closer to this area here. So the animal has got plenty of walking path, plenty of walking path. So basically, this would still be considered the public domain in the middle of the street. So anything damaging in the middle of the street, this normal public thoroughfare to that degree. In that particular case, there's no shame payment in the public domain. You only pay what the animal is benefited. If the stores are on the side now, and there's a little bit of an entrance of the store here, the animal would actually have to change its trajectory and move its head. And in that case, you're liable for damages. Why damages? Because it's unusual damage. It's considered carrying, and you pay half payment damages for the first 3 times. Now, this is where the discussion of Rav and Shmuel is going to come up now, is that basically, let me just share something with you guys, is that Rav said that when the animal turns its head to get at the food that's on the side of the street, that you are obligated for. That is considered keren tam, and that you pay half payment damages. Now, there are 2 opinions of Rav that was said. So the one opinion is that in that particular case, Rav considers it that you pay half payment damages because it's keren tam. But there is another opinion of Rav that basically states that in that particular case, you're considered within the private domain if you start going towards the store and not the entrance that is towards the public. And in that case, it's consuming in the field of another. So we're going to go with the main opinion because we're talking about more the side of the street. Now, Shmuel said, basically, even if the animal turns its head to get the food, the animal's owner is exempt from paying damages. So why is the animal's owner exempt from paying damages? Because I'm getting a million WhatsApp messages. If it's okay, sorry about that. So what Shmuel is saying is that it's not considered if the animal turns its head at this point here, okay, and veers also to the left. He doesn't consider that you should pay particular damages in that case. Why? Why do you think, guys?
Still part of the public domain. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much that he feels
it's not unusual behavior.
Yeah, he's saying it's not unusual enough. If all the animal has to do is turn its head to the left slightly to eat, that constitutes not enough unusual behavior, in Shmuel's opinion, to warrant paying half payment damages. Okay. He's basically saying that the store owner should take a little bit more care than that. And that what's considered unusual damage is if the animal leaves the street entirely and goes towards the entrance of the store. So what I learned is as follows, is that when they built the entrance of the store, there was actually a slight embankment where there was like palisade railing across to stop the animal from gaining proper access. And you would almost walk up an embankment. In other words, your pavements on the side were slightly elevated and there were gates. There were open gate areas so that there was a public thoroughfare, there was a shop in the inside and a place where humans could walk, like there. And then stores there and a place where humans could walk. And it was slightly elevated here with almost railings. That's what we seem to learn. And in the public thoroughfare was more of a dirty sort of main road there that was extremely wide. So what Shmuel is saying is that the animal would literally have to try and climb that embankment or squeeze through where the public would be generally allowed to walk. And in that particular case, it's could be considered much more unusual if you want to talk about unusual damage. But the principle is that if you went to that extent, it's almost considered as though you were liable in a much more unusual way. So I'll give you an example. Animals don't normally, they'll walk down the center of the street. So food on the sides is normally safely out of the animal's way. That's according to Rav. But Rav is basically saying, according to the first opinion, that it's still unusual for the animal to turn its head and eat because of the sort of width of the road. And according to Rashi's original commentary, guys, I'm here. Sorry. Okay. So according to the initial commentary, it's actually a case of eating in the private domain. So according to Shmuel, when an animal actually goes into a store, it's considered eating in a private domain. There's no half payment damages. It's full payment damages, it would seem. And it was saying that even when there's a dissenting opinion, it would have to be so unusual that the animal would literally have to not just turn its head left, but actually get to the food by physically leaving the street. So I'm going to show you a separate diagram and to show you how that works. Okay. Let me just share my screen again. Okay. Now, if you can see this here, there's an issue where there's a store that was built on the narrowing of a road. So in that particular case, even Rav would agree that the animal is not responsible for turning its head. Why? Because it's hardly unusual.
Well, it's walking straight into it.
We're talking about two different sports. Sorry, Michael?
It's like walking straight into it almost, the way it looks there.
Yeah, so what it's saying is the animal merely just slightly putting its head left is deemed normal behavior. When we're talking about a stall in the normal sort of thickness of a road like this, we're talking about where if the animal is equivalent of that length, it would have to veer almost its whole body and its head to try and get through the entrance of the stall. So we're saying that they're two very, very different cases. Okay, so the reason why we're trying to determine what's going on backwards and forwards is there are two versions of Rav and there are two versions of Shmuel here. And it's going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. So what I'm trying to do is just choose the right sort of version that makes sense, because every version that you read is, contradictory to each other. So if you look in the Gemara, it says the Rishonim cite two different versions of Rashi. According to Rashi's original commentary, Rav means that when the animal turns its head to eat, it's a case of keren, and the owner will pay half damages for the first three occurrences and full damages for the fourth. According to Rashi's revised commentary, Rav means that the animal's owner must pay because it's a case of shame in the field of another. So the explanation is as follows. The Torah says that if you obviously eat in the field of another, according to Shmuel chapter 4, it's a case that would even happen towards the store entrance, because it's considered within the field, or not the field, the private property of the store owner. So you've got two different opinions of Rav, okay, which is a difficulty, which Nachman Bar Yitzchak will deal with in the Gemara. And that's where we have the issue. So for example, version 1 in the Mishnah, it pays for the benefit if it ate from the side of the street, and it pays half payment. That's according to Rashi's first. According to Rashi's second, it stretched its neck to eat from the side of the Chavia, and in that particular case, it would be considered shame damage because it stuck its head in the private domain. So according then to Shmuel's response, the animal is exempt. Why? Because Shmuel doesn't consider that proper damage. He said that just because even if you want to cite it, firstly, it's in the public domain. And secondly, even if you want to call it within the private domain, you can't do that because there's narrow walkways where people go to look at those stores and venture towards those stores. Plus, there's almost embankments where it's slightly elevated and there's almost like gating. So in that particular case, the animal would have to actually get off the street itself. That's according to Shmuel. So it says, according to Shmuel, when does the Mishnah obligate the payment? It's when the animal left the public domain completely and went to the side. Okay? So we're trying to wade through these two different arguments. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to keep it clear, but it's shooting backwards and forwards. Okay? Just go through and give you one last bit of clarity. Okay. The basic rule is any food that's left in the public domain, the owner relinquishes entitlement to it and has got no claims against the owners of the animals that eat the food. But you do have the right to keep your food on the side of the public thoroughfare because it's uncommon for animals to eat there as they walk the length of the street. If the animal turns its head and eats from the side of the street, the owner is liable for the animal ate from the field of another, from the place where someone else was entitled to keep his food. And consider it safe for animals that were walking by. This is according to Tosfot and Rabbein and Peretz. So now we've got like a slightly different detail. So according to Shmuel, it's a regular case of shame in the public domain, and you're not obligated. So basically, in Shmuel's view, the owner of the food does not have the right to leave his food where animals walking through the street can reach it simply by turning his head. That's what Tosfot says. So to me, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know what you guys think. That's why he goes,
Yeah.
Fine, yeah.
But he was saying it's not unusual, exactly as Michael said, just for the animal to turn its head. That's not considered that unusual because if any animal smells food, it's not going to do anything but slightly veer off or turn its head. So Tosfot is saying, according to Shmuel's view, that the animal would actually have to leave the road itself and climb on that embankment in that private area. Okay, let me just see if I left anything else of Tosfot. Okay. All right. Okay, so now we want to ask how Shmuel explains and she pays what she is damaged, okay? Because the Gemara is now asking, okay, so we understood what that means, but if you're implying she pays what she is damaged, what case are you talking about? So it says, according to Shmuel, how do you find that the animal's owner is liable for damages when she eats from the side of the street? The Gemara answers, Shmuel will explain that the Mishnah refers to a case when she left the street altogether and went and stood on the side of the street. The Gemara notes, there are those who report this discussion as an independent one rather than one that's revolving around the meaning of our Mishnah. So what is the law when the animal turns ahead to get at food that is on the side of the street? Rav says she is liable, but Shmuel said she is not. Okay, so that we've concluded. On this, the Gemara asks, and according to Shmuel, how do you find that she is liable to pay what she has damaged? And the Gemara answers, we are 21a3. According to Shmuel, the Mishnah refers to a case where she left the street altogether and went and stood on the side of the street. Great, we covered that. So the Gemara is now going to challenge Rav. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak challenged Rav from the Mishnah's ruling. From the entrance of the store, she pays what she has benefited. How do you find such a case? Clearly, it refers to when she turned her head. Yet it says she pays what she benefited, implying that if she paid what she benefited, yes, but not what she is damaged. Okay. Guys, am I sharing my screen at the moment or not? I am.
No.
I'm not.
You know,
okay.
no.
Okay. So what we're basically saying here is Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak challenges Rav, and it says, what are you going to do with the statement? Because basically you said, from the entrance of the store, she pays what she benefited. That's fine. And then you saying, what are you going to do with that statement? Because Rav's statement is that when you turn your head to the left and the animal eats, the animal pays what it damaged, means it's keren, unusual. And because the animal pays what it damaged, it's seeming to contradict the Mishnah, because the Mishnah said on the entrance of the store, she pays what she benefited. So Michael, what is the Gemara saying here? Otherwise I'll repeat it. I want you to hear the question. Did I lose all you guys?
No, I
Yeah.
just got distracted. I had the bell ringing here.
I'm sorry. I'm not putting pressure on you
No,
guys.
I just had the bell ringing here, and I'm pissed off with my maid again for not answering. So I'm like, sorry, just repeat the question.
No, it's fine. It's fine. All right. So what we're saying is Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak has an issue. It said that Rav did not answer the question initially, it seems, because the Mishnah says it pays what she has benefited from the entrance of the store, meaning that it's a place of shame, meaning the entrance of the store is still considered the public domain, because the minute it uses the term, if you pay what you benefited, what does that mean? It means you exempt from shame. Guys, are you all with me here?
Yes.
Sorry, you exempt from shame. You don't.
In other words, you're either obligated. No. I'm saying if you're obligated for shame in the private domain, you pay everything the animal consumed in somebody else's property.
Right.
If you do not pay for shame because you're not obligated in the public domain, then you don't pay for shame in the public domain. And the only thing you pay for is the animal's equivalent of the next meal. So if Paris ate 2,000 rands worth of smoked salmon at Moishes, outside the entrance of Moishes, not in Moishes, because that would be a private domain, it would be Moishes. But so they were displaying salmon outside, and Paris came with you for a walk, and then Paris whipped out 2 grams worth of salmon, and it was at the entrance of the store. What we're saying is that you have to give the owner of Moishes a can of E-Pol and say thank you. Guys, Paris was very happy because you don't owe, it's at the entrance.
So
okay?
At the entrance, not in his private domain, at the entrance of the store.
Yes, at the entrance of the store. So there's an opinion here. So we're trying to find out at the entrance of the store, does that constitute a store or not? And so far we can see it doesn't. In other words, even the reason why I think Rav made, it's just an assumption, the damage, Keren damage, is because let's examine this. Gavin, you weren't here. If not according to Rabbi Tarfon, who says it's full payment in the public domain, but Kevin, Arthur, we learned that all the rabbis said that in the public domain or the private domain, you pay half payment damages for Keren Tam. So you wouldn't pay any difference between the private domain and the public. So if it's an argument to say, well, it's not, it's public domain, it's by the street. If you go by Radin, it's that street, it's just off Durham, it's not in your store. The animal was walking, I was walking on a leash. What are you doing having your food in the entrance? And I could turn around and say, well, it's my store. You can clearly see I'm displaying wares. And you could say, but it's where dogs can access it. And I've taken my dog for a walk. In order to eliminate that sort of argument, the best thing you could say, it's an unusual damage because the animal doesn't usually behave like that. And therefore, if I had to say it's Keren, according to the rabbis, not according to Rabbi Tarfon, would it make any difference if it's in the public or private domain in principle with regards to payment, yes or no?
It wouldn't make a difference. So
no.
Your only argument is if it happens, you can say, and the owner says, no, well, you definitely must pay. You can say, well, no, sorry, it's shame.
No, the only argument is if you hold according to according to the Shane argument. So if you want to say that you had your store not in the main road, and that all animals travel in the main road, but the entrance of your store was on the very side of the road where the animal would have to exert effort. In that particular case, it's unusual for the animal. But you wouldn't get into a logistical argument or a technical argument about what's yours of the store, in other words, because you displayed wares compared to it's the public thoroughfare. Because again, if I'm obligating you for Keren damage, there's principally no payment difference. Because half payment damages for an unusual act would be the same in a public domain compared to a private. Correct. So if you want to avoid any drama, that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the way that it would be done. So what it's saying is, okay, I hear that you say, that according to Rav, you pay what the animal has damaged. That's fine. But the Mishnah doesn't say this, because before we learned in the statement and say those that say that this Mishnah is connected to Rav and Shmuel's argument. And there are those that say this Mishnah is not connected to Rav and Shmuel's argument. So if you want to say that this Mishnah is not connected to Rav and Shmuel's argument, you can say that Rav is calling it damage and that Shmuel is calling it eating in the private domain. Okay, you can say that. But if you're trying to link it to this Mishnah and say the argument was about this Mishnah, it has to follow the words of this Mishnah. So this is where Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak has a problem, because he's challenging Rav. Rav is basically saying, Rav is basically turning around and saying, listen, we've got a problem here, because Rav Nachman is saying to Rav that you turning around and saying she pays what she has damaged. But what are you going to do with the wording of this Mishnah? If you want to say that the argument is in this Mishnah, the Mishnah turns around and says, from the entrance of the store, she pays what she has benefited. So, which means that Rav turns around and says, from the entrance of the store, she pays what she has damaged. So clearly it refers to where she turns her head. So what it's saying is that if Rav wants to say that you pay carrying damages because it's unusual that the animal turns its head at the entrance of the store, the Mishnah seems to stay here that she pays what she has benefited, meaning it's a case of you do not pay for shame because the entrance of the store is considered a public domain, and the only thing you pay for is the animal's next meal. So what is Rav going to do with that statement? Okay? Because it says she pays what she has benefited, implying, yes, what she has benefited, but not what she has damaged. So the Gemara answers, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak asked it and answered it himself because he knew the answer. So he'd say, listen, this is the problem that you could have on Rav. Not that Rav never thought of the answer. And this would be the answer Rav would give. So Rav would give the following answer. He, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, asked it and he answered it himself on behalf of Rav. The Mishnah taught where the store stands at a corner. So let me just share my screen with you and explain what that means. We've got about 2 minutes left. Okay. So what we're saying is here that we're not talking about a normal road here that's thick. Okay? We're not talking about a road here because here the animals would generally be about this big, the public walkway. You'd have the store, private stores there, and the entrance of the stores may be there. The animal would have to completely veer off its path in order to get there, and more than just turn its head. So Rav Nachman said, Rav is not talking about that. He said, when there's a shopkeeper that puts their store at the point where the road has already narrowed. And he's saying in that particular case, even Rav does not obligate the store owner because he can't consider it unusual damage. Why? Because the animal barely turns its head and just starts munching exactly where the animal is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he's saying in that case, it's damage in the public domain. It's shame. Rav would even agree that you're not responsible if your animal ate from the entrance of the store where the store narrowed. You only pay for the animal's next meal. You don't pay for shame damage because the animal's owner was negligent to build a store where the road narrowed.
Yeah.
So even Rav would say there you pay where she benefited because we're talking about a store on a narrow road, which is the owner's responsibility for making the store in such a silly place. Okay, so Rav determines the difference between normal behavior and where the person built a store in a place where clearly can't hold passers-by obligated for payment because of his negligence of building a store there. So that's how Rav would answer she pays what she's benefited in a case of a narrow road. All right, guys, we covered a bit of ground. Hopefully we're getting through all the little intricacies, and I want to wish you a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Dan.
Thanks.
Sorry,
Damon. Thanks,
guys,
guys.
it's backwards and forwards with Rav and